Welcome to the Crossview Commons, a podcast focusing on the ministries, ministry partners, and the people of Crossview Church. My name is Mark Lanting, and it's my pleasure to share with you what God is doing in and through Crossview Church in DeKalb, Illinois. And today I'm happy to have with me Nolan Hodge, our youth pastor here at Crossview. Welcome, Nolan.
Hey, thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.
And thank you for bearing with me and not hitting record 3 times in a row.
Hey, it's totally fine. It happens.
Yeah, I'm not really a rookie at this anymore, but it is the first episode of this new season of the podcast, so maybe I'm a little rusty.
And we're recording this in the evening too, so we both had a long day.
Definitely. Yeah, it's a start of an academic year for me, and so my head is swimming a little bit.
Yeah.
The start of kind of the fall push for you. So,
yeah.
Not that it's your fault that I didn't record, but I might blame you a little bit.
That's fine.
So you've had a very full summer. You've had lots of travel with youth groups and with family events and friends getting married and things. And now you're settling into a different season altogether.
Yeah, the summer was a pretty busy one. I think on the youth ministry front, a lot of youth ministries tend to kind of chill out in the summer and have less programming, but I think historically Crossview has kind of used the opportunity with students having more open schedules to kind of ramp things up. So, yeah, we did a lot of summer events and then, a lot of kind of personal travel. And so I'm looking forward to the consistency that fall brings of just getting into a regular rhythm and just having those consistent youth group meetings and kind of getting into that teaching rhythm too, of just consistently teaching within a series every week. So
yeah, that's great. I'd like to hear more about that in a minute. But for now, one of the things that's happening at Crossview is a huge influx of new people. And these new people are coming in and jumping right into ministry and are serving the church right away. But it's a fair number. And so I think it would be fair to them if, we introduce ourselves. Well, you introduce yourself a little bit more. Just talk about your family, your background, whatever you want to tell us about.
Yeah, sure. So, my parents and their families are both from Illinois. And so I actually spent most of my childhood growing up in Massachusetts because my dad was pastoring a church out there. But when I was in high school, my family moved back to Illinois and ended up in DeKalb. So I actually attended Crossview as a high school student and went through the high school ministry. And so that was just a really formative time, a really sweet time. Ended up going down to Kentucky for college at Asbury University. And so I was down there for undergrad and ended up in Louisville, Kentucky after that. So I was doing ministry down there, met my wife down there, and I guess was in Louisville for about 7 or 8 years. And then found out that Crossview was looking for a youth pastor, and I'd been doing youth ministry down there on a part-time level. I was really looking to get into it full-time, and just with the positive experience I had with Crossview as a student, I was really excited to come back. And so we moved back up here at the end of 2022. So we're coming up on 2 years being here. And then, I have my wife, Haley, and we have, he's a little over 2.5 now.
Right.
He'll be 3 in January, an almost 3-year-old named Silas. And he's just a really sweet, fun guy in a really fun phase of life.
Yeah.
So.
All my kids are very fond of Silas.
Yes.
Nora
adores him.
They spent a lot of time after church chasing each other through the hallways.
Yeah, I'm waiting for her to get a few years older so she'll be a good babysitter.
Yeah, I'm sure she will be. She would love it. A little bit young still, but the day will happen. Well, that's cool. So some non-youth pastor things, first of all.
Sure.
You play instruments. I've heard you play both drums and piano. Where does that come from, and how did that start?
Yeah, let me see. So piano, I took piano lessons when I was a kid, and so back then I could read sheet music and everything, but then, I don't know, sometime in my adolescent years, stopped taking lessons and kind of didn't use that skill for a long time, and still until I started to get into ministry. So the church that I was at in Kentucky, they were looking for someone to play piano, and they're like, does anyone know how to play piano? I'm like, I did some lessons when I was a kid, but then started doing piano at that church and ended up being an interim worship leader there for 2 separate stints. So I kind of dusted off those skills. So I'm not I'm not very classically literate with sheet music and everything, but I can figure out those chords.
All right.
So
that'll get a congregation through worship, right? Yeah.
So I view that nowadays as kind of my secondary instrument, but then I play drums, and I consider that more my primary instrument where I can just kind of pick it up and go. But I actually started playing drums here at Crossview back in the day. Okay. Yeah. And so I think I started kind of on the djembe, the little hand drum. Yeah. For like a couple different events, and then just started playing the kit. At the time, Rock Band, the video game, was a big deal, and I started playing Rock Band. And the funny thing about that video game is if you can play the Rock Band drums well, you're basically just playing drums. So I actually, like, that video game helped me hone in
That's amazing.
my skill with drums, which is kind of funny. Yeah. But yeah, since then, I'd been playing drums consistently, so I had a couple different bands.
My boys were telling me about a band that they want you to have a revival and bring the band out. What was the name of it again?
It might be Draft Horse Day.
Draft Horse Day, yeah.
Now everyone's gonna look at that. Don't look up Draft Horse Day.
Look up Draft Horse Day.
Yeah, that was a little like kind of comedy punk rock project that we did in college. That band started to win the Battle of the Bands competition at my university.
Right on.
We were like, we need to get a band together and try to win this. And we won it for 3 years, which is kind of a fun fact. But yeah, so played with a few different bands in my day. And so I don't currently have any kind of band, but playing on the worship team is a cool outlet to still get to play and be creative. And so that's been a lot of fun. Yeah,
when I talked to Stu, the last podcast I did with him, we were both reflecting on how blessed Crossview is with musical talent. A lot of churches I've been to do not have that, and they, do the best they can with who they have. But we have people who are very musically able.
Oh, yeah.
Both in voice and instruments.
Yeah, oftentimes when I'm playing with people on the worship team, I'm like, I am the lower level of skill on this stage right now. There's a lot of talent up here.
For sure.
We're some really talented people.
Yeah. Other non-youth pastor thing, you've gotten to preach how many times now since you've been here?
Oh, I don't know. Probably like 3-ish? 3 or 4 maybe?
Can you reflect on what that's been like? Do you enjoy it? Is that something you want to do more?
Yeah, it's something, I think I've told Jeff that I'm cool with, like, preaching maybe once a quarter or something like that. So it's something I do enjoy doing. I did it quite a bit at the church I was at in Kentucky. And so coming into Crossview was something I had experience doing. But I do really enjoy it. I like getting to kind of sit in a text for a long time and kind of let it affect my heart first before I start kind of putting things together. So I really do enjoy that process, and it's just really encouraging to just like get feedback from the congregation as well.
For sure.
And to be able to engage with them after preaching a sermon. So
I love when you do it. You do a great job.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Well, let's get into some youth group kind of questions. Wonder if you could just start, from the last year, highlights from middle school group and high school group, and maybe we can go from there.
Yeah, that's a big question because I feel like there's been a lot of highlights, a lot of fun. Of course, like the first thing I think of is kind of just like the bigger events. So we did the mission trip last summer through Apex Missions, which is the youth branch of Reach Global, which is our denominational mission organization. And so, we went through Apex Missions to Chicago, and we worked with the South Asian Friendship Center, which does ministry in the Little India neighborhood in Chicago. And that was a really cool experience. And I was still, that was my first summer. I was still fairly new. So just like getting to know the students more through that experience and see them kind of stretch and grow was really, really cool. And then, of course, we did Challenge this summer, which was our big summer event.
Tell the folks what Challenge is.
Yeah, so Challenge is the EFCA's National Youth Conference. So EFCA churches around the country send their youth and their youth groups.
Yeah, so how many people are in that audience about?
think it was around 4,000.
That's what I was hearing. So it's a good size group.
About 4,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it was. I wouldn't say we filled up the Kansas City Convention Center, but we had a substantial amount of people in the Kansas City Convention Center. And so yeah, that was a more fresh experience, but that was really cool too. Winter retreats have been a lot of fun. Last winter we combined both the middle school and high school, and took I think we were like a group of 50 in total up to Covenant Harbor, which was chaotic, but it was really cool. And
was there snow? I don't remember.
No.
Yeah, that's right.
It's
It's kind of a warm time of year.
Yeah, that's the thing about Covenant Harbor is that you never know if you're going to get snow in southern Wisconsin.
Yeah.
But I feel like the odds are against us. I feel like we should get more snow, but 2 of the times we've done it, we haven't gotten snow. So I don't know.
Let me ask you a little bit more about challenge.
Yeah.
Can you tell me, I imagine it's a high charged, worship and powerful speakers and things like that. Do you find that it was useful, positive, sustained kind of, or sustainable kind of energy? Or is it more like a mountaintop thing and you kind of come crashing down? I went to things like that when I was a kid, and they're memorable. But what do you think about the over? And we don't have to criticize it too much. I'm just wondering what your experience is with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think with any conference, there is kind of that mountaintop type experience. But I do think Challenge is good at naming that. And so like some of the later sessions, like that was stated was like, hey, you guys are having this like emotionally charged experience, this mountaintop experience here, but you're going to come down off the mountain. It was kind of funny too, because the kind of topic for the week was the Sermon on the Mount. So that language kind of had a dual meaning of like, yes, this emotional high mountaintop experience, but also like they went up on the mountain to hear from Jesus, and then you come down the mountain. And so they did, I think, a really good job at just recognizing that, and I think preparing students for that. And I really like the fact, too, that, and I was talking with Rennie Garda, who does ministry locally, but she's also, like, helped plan Challenge.
Okay.
And she mentioned that how, like, they used to try to get a lot of bigger names to come and talk, and kind of these more, like, Christian celebrities.
Right.
But in more recent years, they've stuck with more just kind of, like, people doing ministry in everyday kind of life. Instead of these big conference speakers,
Sure.
they're just picking people from churches that have a passion for youth ministry and sharing what God is doing in their lives. And so there was a certain level of like humility I felt with a lot of the speakers too, where they weren't like incredibly showy people, but I actually really liked that.
Yeah. My boys were, they went to Challenge, and we were going over the itinerary speakers, and saw that People in Song were doing the music.
Oh, yeah.
And I had followed People in Song for a long, long time. What a great set of musicians, and I feel like they get the heart of worship pretty well. Was that a good experience for you guys? I mean, you can tell me if it wasn't. I don't care.
Yeah, I think they might have had one person from that group
sure.
that came in. So it was like a combination of different.
Worship
Like it wasn't
leaders
just
and
one
things.
band; it was a
Got
few
it.
different leaders from different churches and different groups that kind of led worship. And yeah, like I thought, on a musical level, it was really fun. A little different than what we have at Crossview.
Yeah.
Just a little more higher production. But
Sure.
for a conference, it's cool to kind of
you want to
engage
spruce it
in a
up,
different
right?
way. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Well, that's great. I'm glad that was a good experience for you.
And I shared this after or during the announcements once we got back from Challenge here at Crossview. But it was really cool because we're talking about these kind of mountaintop, high emotion experiences of going to a conference. But the moment that was most impactful for our students was this moment of just extended silence that happened at the end of one of the sessions, and just in that moment, a lot of students just felt like they heard from God in really cool ways. And so it's just neat that like you can have the biggest kind of production and the best music and the best speakers, but it was that moment of silence where the students just had time to reflect and to pray to God on their own, where God really met them. And so that was just cool.
Yeah.
And I think that proves too that their response in the ways that they were communing with God. It wasn't because of all these conference-y things. It was just they took a week dedicated to pursuing the Lord, and in that God met them. So it was really cool to see just kind of some breakthroughs happening. And I know that there were several students that said that like because of having that experience, it was kind of the next step in their faith and the next step in their trust of Jesus. So.
Yeah. I am very interested in and have taught on spiritual disciplines. And one of the hardest ones, but the most important ones, is silence.
Oh, yeah.
It's hard for us because the second we get in the car, we turn on music or a podcast, right? The second we get home, there's family with kids, and it's noisy. And when it's quiet, you just want to crash. Right?
Yeah.
Lately, I've been saying this meditation in my head in moments of quiet. It's, for God alone, my soul awaits in silence. For God alone, my soul awaits in silence. And you kind of just let that soak in. And, you know, I'm not one to say hear an audible voice or anything, but I feel closer to God for having spent that time in silence.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate the discipline of silence too. And you're totally right that it's like, it's super hard to start. But once you get into the rhythm of it, you find it very restful and very beautiful. And I love it when we can incorporate elements of silence into corporate worship as kind of a part of a liturgical rhythm. I found that really cool. Yeah,
really good. Well, I'm so happy to hear about these experiences and about it being meaningful for you and the students who went to Challenge. This has been a season of change for, I know, the high school group where you've had your first batch of seniors off board, and you've had some freshmen on board as well. And I know that changes some dynamics because you have bigger personalities that go and different personalities that come on. I'm just wondering, what's it been like for you and the group to have seniors graduate and move on from the group?
Yeah, so last year, like last May, May 23, we didn't lose really anyone. We just didn't have a senior presence. And then this year we lost, I think, 5 or 6, a good chunk of seniors. And so, it's been a little sad. I know it's been a little bittersweet. But part of youth ministry is that every year, generally speaking, the group kind of shifts and changes because you send other students out and then you gain new students coming in. And so there's always a little bit of concern, I think, as a youth pastor, just like, okay, what is this group going to look like this year without these kind of core students? Because, the senior class that left, a lot of them were just really strong leaders.
Power hitters,
Yeah, and really kind of helped shape the welcoming culture of the group.
When they were the social connectors, right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
At least one of them was that, I know.
Yeah, like after every youth group, they all go out to Portillo's together and hang out into the wee hours of the morning. And that was really like initiated by them to spend time with each other outside of just church programming.
So that's still going.
That's still going. And I think the cool provisional thing is that when those kind of leaders phase out, there's other students that kind of step up to fill that leadership role. And so I've been seeing that even this summer of just, this person is like being more involved and being more proactive and reaching out to students and is kind of like finding these other leaders that are starting to take initiative. And so that's really cool. And so, it was kind of funny. We lost kind of this heavy hitting senior class, but then we gained a pretty substantial freshman class.
Okay.
So the group now is more like freshman loaded, which I was a little concerned about, but has actually been really good. And so I think the dynamic right now is pretty fun. I think you do have some of those juniors and current seniors stepping up, and then you have this really kind of vibrant underclassmen vibe. So,
my observation has been some of the mid to upperclassmen are really warming up to the freshmen.
Yeah.
And I see them palling around and everything.
Yeah.
Which is super cool.
Yeah, and that's the beautiful thing about the church, right? Is that maybe at school the freshmen and the seniors wouldn't hang out so much, but
right.
in the church community they're good friends. And so I know Yeah, I know, like at Sycamore High School, like even your son has been hanging out at lunch with a couple of the other
Yeah.
youth group students, and so they're forming kind of community at their school and inviting other people into that. So,
Yeah,
it's really great.
like to see that. Um, Now, on the other side of things, you're also over our middle school group.
Yeah.
That's grades 6 through 8, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And new sixth graders are very young. What's it like receiving them? Are they eager to be in the group? Are they, participating well? Are you able to integrate them? That's a whole different kind of person at that age.
Yeah, I think a lot of the incoming sixth graders kind of growing up, the ones that kind of grow up in Crossview
Yeah.
children's programming, are really excited by the time they get to go to youth group. And so, yeah, the sixth grade class has been really enthusiastic. Has been really fun. Yeah, so we lost a big eighth grade class, and we've kind of gained a decent sized sixth grade class. So our demographic is more on the sixth grade side of things. So I've adjusted my teaching style a little bit for that group this summer. That's the thing too, is that like there's an element of fluidity in youth ministry where it's like you got to meet the students kind of where they're at developmentally, on a faith level, but also just on a growth level, right?
Sure.
And so, yeah, like this summer was a little bit of trial and error and just figuring out what the culture of the group is, kind of trying to figure out where the students are at. And what's also interesting too with our middle school is that our high school ministry stays really consistent in attendance over the summer, so we don't really dip down in numbers at all over
That's
the
great.
summer.
Yeah.
Middle school, for the 2 years I've been here, we've gone way down over the summer because in the spring we were probably pushing 25 middle schoolers
Wow, okay.
a week. Then during the summer we got down to like 5 to 7.
Lots of family travel,
yeah,
baseball, whatever. Who knows?
Yeah, I think it's just, I don't know. I have some theories about why that might be, but I think, there's just a lot of family travel
Yeah.
in part. And I know some other youth ministries in the area take a break during the summer. And so I think some of those, like a lot of the middle schoolers that were coming were families that weren't involved with our church directly.
I see.
And so I think they might just be used to the fact that, like, oh, during the summer, you're not really doing as much. But here at Crossview, we have been doing just as much. So all that to say, the group has been slowly kind of building back coming into the fall.
Oh,
And so it's been a little different, just like adjusting kind of teaching styles for the size of the group, for the developmental space of the group.
Yeah.
But that's another reason I'm excited for the fall, is just to get that group kind of more consistent, kind of figure that group out a little more.
For sure.
But it's a great group of kids.
Yeah.
They're really sweet. So.
Yeah. Let me ask, what is your goal when a kid starts in either youth group? Where do you want to see them? How do you want to see them grow? I mean, they come at you from all kinds of backgrounds, all kinds of levels of commitment to Christ in their homes.
Yeah.
And maybe that's too broad of a question, but let's say someone's coming at you as a freshman, and you're seeing this kid likely staying with you for the high school experience. Yeah. What are some of your hopes, and what are some of your plans, and what are some of your goals for that student?
Yeah, I think a big one is that they would just begin exploring faith in Jesus on their own. Mm-hmm. Because I think most students that come through our doors have some kind of experience with Christianity, have some kind of background in faith. And I think, a good chunk of our students are ones that have come up through the church. And so they've just kind of inherited the faith from their families. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's a great thing. But I think once you get into youth ministry, there's a very distinct process of like, okay, you can kind of give me all the Sunday school answers. You can tell me about the faith of your family and their kind of beliefs, but what do you think? Where are you at? How do you view Jesus? And so, part of the reason I'm really passionate about youth ministry is it's just developmentally a time when students are trying to figure themselves out and ask some of those deeper questions of themselves. And so I'm really passionate about stepping into that process and pointing students to Jesus in that. So, yeah, I just think like a baseline goal is like getting students to start engaging with faith on their own, um, and start to ask those questions on their own. And ultimately, I want students to come to trust in Jesus fully, to walk with Him faithfully, but recognizing that like I have a role to play in that, but that's ultimately a work that God does in their hearts. But I'm there to get them to ask those questions, to start engaging, and with a trust that God's going to meet them in that process.
Yeah, I think that's outstanding. One of the things I love about Crossview is, we're not so much based in metrics like number of attendees, number of salvations, number of this, number of that. I mean, I'd like to have numbers of all those kinds. That's fine, sure, right? But the real win is when you have someone who's converting and converted into a disciple of Christ, right? And you can't really measure for that so much, but who becomes a closer disciple to Jesus and whatnot. You see it, right?
Yeah.
You see it in the way kids treat other kids, the way I see my boys changing their tone at home with regard to how they're managing their younger sister.
Yeah.
And they've both taken great strides, to be better servants and things.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
and I think for those students that, like, I know are walking faithfully with Jesus, it is that aspect of kind of wanting to develop that ministry kind of perspective in their hearts. Not to say that they're all going to go into, vocational ministry.
Certainly.
But that idea of, okay, you do have this faith, but God wants to use that faith, that trust that you have in Him, to bring others to a knowledge of Him, to bring the kingdom of God into the world around you. And so God wants to use you. And so, for students that I know are already on the journey, that becomes a goal of just wanting to see them be leaders in ministry, leaders in spreading the good news of Jesus and caring for others around them, and having more of a visible faith, not a visible in a sense of just, so you can look good and other people can see your faith, but like, it's easy to just kind of have a faith in Jesus, but keep it as a private belief. And so I really am trying to push students to like, hey, if you are walking with Jesus, that's going to come forth in your actions,
right,
and how you're living your life. So I think a lot of the studies we've been doing in high school has been like, we did James and then we did 1 John a little bit later, and both of those are like, okay, you have this belief, but how are you acting? How are you living? How are you not being hypocritical by, we don't want our actions to contradict our belief. And so that's been a focus specifically, I think.
Yeah, I think those are really good choices in terms of the books that you're mentioning. Jeff says something frequently, you're never going to drift into a closer relationship with Jesus. You have to be super intentional about it, right? It doesn't mean anything close to basing our merit on our works, right? No, we do these works because we're compelled to, because of our love for Christ and our hope growing love for one another, right?
I think those are things, the works and faith, something we hold together, Right. I think sometimes it's easy in Protestant Christianity for us to be all about faith, but then kind of disregard works. But if you read a lot of the biblical authors, works are very important to them because it's the evidence that there is faith.
Right. Moving forward. Well, let me ask, what are some plans you have for the youth groups coming up that you're excited about? Can be as near or far in the future as you'd like.
Let's see. So because we did so many events over the summer, I'm taking it a little easy on the schedule for the fall. And I think that's part of me just, being 2 years in now, just kind of like figuring out the rhythms of what a calendar year looks like in youth ministry. So we're being a little more chill this fall. But I actually started sending some emails today about winter retreats. So those are already, getting planned and prepped. So I haven't formally decided this, but I think we're going to partner with a couple local churches and join in on what they do for their winter retreats.
Sure.
So, and this is historically something that we did called Snow Camp. So First Baptist in Sycamore, Bethany Road Bible Church, then a couple other churches from the suburbs. We used to do a big winter retreat locally with the local churches. And so I'm thinking about doing that this coming winter, which I'm excited about. And we've already been doing large youth group. We call them the gatherings, but it's basically like a large community youth worship service. And we've been doing that every few months with those churches too.
Great.
So looking forward to maybe doing a winter retreat with those local churches, local youth groups. And I'm excited to kind of continue those partnerships. And yeah, just for my faith, being a student in high school through Crossview's youth ministry, getting to be involved in the local church community with other churches and getting to know students from other local churches was really important to me. And so I'm excited to kind of foster that community with our current students too.
Yeah, that sounds exciting.
So yeah, and then the 2 series we're doing this fall, for the middle school group, we're doing an Exploring Questions series. And so they're going to anonymously submit questions they have about anything regarding the Bible, Jesus, faith, religion, and I'm going to base the series off their questions.
All right.
So we're doing that with the middle school this fall. I'm looking forward to that. I haven't gotten next week I'm going to get the questions, so I'm excited to see what they're asking, what's been on their hearts and minds. And then with the high school, we're doing a series called This Is My Story, This Is My Story, focused on testimonies. And so I'm going to have every volunteer leader kind of share their testimony, look at also some testimonies of faith from Scripture, with the goal of equipping students to better tell their stories of faith.
Very cool.
And so that's part of kind of the developmental journey of like being more vocal with your faith, being more outward with your faith. And so, I'm looking forward to both of those teaching series.
Excellent.
Too. I think it'll be fun.
That sounds really good. Well, what are some things that we can be praying for you and for the youth groups?
Yeah, I think for the youth groups, I pray for the continual community building. Like we mentioned earlier, just some of those seniors played a really important role in kind of building that community. And so you can continually pray that God would strengthen those bonds among the students in a friendship sense, which is super important, but also like Christ-centered friendships. Because to me, it's like as a 31-year-old man, I can speak into the lives of these students and I can mentor them and teach them. But I think a big part of growing in your faith is when you have peers around you that are also walking with Jesus that can encourage you and strengthen you. So I'm really just praying for continual growth in those relationships among the students.
All right.
And so that's something that you can continue to pray for. For the high school, that's very much relevant. For the middle school, it's also relevant. It looks a little different.
Sure.
I think with the middle school, it's very much learning like how to be kind to one another, how to have positive friendship. And so I would love for those Christ-centered friendships to be a way that they just experience positive community. That would be really cool.
That sounds just fine.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you, Nolan, and thank you for your good work and for all you do, youth groups and beyond. So,
thank you so much. Yeah, and you can be praying for me just in figuring out kind of the balance in scheduling things. And, I feel like this summer was a lot, so I'm looking forward to
I think that's really wise, honestly. Just knowing all the things my kids did, it's like, a little chill is welcome. Especially because everyone's really, with academics and whatnot and extracurricular stuff. I mean, calendars are full, man.
So wisdom and kind of knowing when to program things and knowing when to kind of back off a little bit and to just be relational. I think that's something that I'm learning in regards to specifically youth ministry, but just ministry in general, is like it's really easy to get programmatic and to try to do a bunch of things, but sometimes the most important space is the space where you just get to be with people.
Yeah.
And so, just talking about the whole going to Portillo's after youth group thing, it's like students won't ask a ton of questions during our lesson time or small group time, but then when we go to Portillo's, it's like all these like questions about their faith come up, and it's interesting just because it's like there's no kind of pretext of like this program. We're just hanging out, and so they feel free to be more themselves.
Kind of
and they
what
feel
Jesus did. He
Yeah.
has the situations at hand to minister to the people closest to him and all around it, right? And so I think it's important that we be situated in similar ways. Jesus wasn't super programmatic. He was
Yeah.
on a journey, no doubt. right?
Yeah.
But no, I think that's just fantastic. What what kids want really is time with you, right?
Yeah.
And Haley.
Yeah.
when they
Oh,
can. And Silas.
Yeah. The
All
whole
right.
family.
Well, I want to thank you for coming in today and spending some time with me and sharing some updates with our church family and beyond. We got people listening all over the place now. All right. Thanks, Nolan.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Mark. Appreciate it.
And thank you for joining us. Our church services are on Sundays at 9 a.m. and 10:45 a.m. and streaming online at those times through Crossview's website. For more information on Crossview, visit our website at crossviewefca.com.